up 'cause your name is so high.
I will lift it up 'cause your name is so high.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Africa Teach It, a production of the Pepperbird magazine. I'm J. Rodney Chesson, your host. Today we have a very different format for our show. Usually when we have interviews, we have people sit and we just go through the process. But in this edition of our show, I have a very special guest with me who is none other than our community-owned professor, Professor Edmund Zaza Babla. Professor Babla is a highly educated member of the Liberian and African communities in Rhode Island. He is also an instructor at one of our high schools, the Central High School, and he is also a former leader of the Liberian Community Association of Rhode Island. Currently, Professor Babla has initiated a Facebook page called the African Intellectual Forum. And over the past month, that forum has already picked up. There are constant postings about affairs in Africa. He recently did his Black History Month series. And also, Professor Babla has been one of the people in our community who has been very significant in pushing the Boko Haram issue and the need for us to get involved and have this group stopped, dismantled, destroyed. So we'll deal with that in the second segment of our show. Recently I was going through Facebook and looking at some of the different pages, and I decided to check on the African Union page. And I tell you, when I got on that page, they were trying to promote the new flag, which is the African Rising banner, or some kind of banner. And I heard the national anthem, or the anthem for the African Union. And to tell you, my heart totally fell. I was so disgusted, shamed, because I want you to hear an excerpt from that series. So just join me for a while and let's listen to this African Union thing, and we'll discuss it afterwards. Now this is the flag, the African Rising banner.
Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together, to defend our liberty and unity.
Now, when I saw this banner and I heard this anthem, there was nothing between these two things that represented Africa. It's a good anthem, but it's European. There is no drums. There's nothing, no salsa, no African dancing and singing. This is not African. This is European. So my question is, what are the leaders of the African Union doing? Are they paying attention to the things that represent Africa from their leadership perspective? Because this thing is totally un-African. There will not be anything that is representative of Africa without the drums, without the salsa. Those are our traditional instruments. So my advice to our leaders in Africa is to please make us proud. Please make us lift our heads up and say we are a part of Africa. Show us. Get rid of this anthem. Get rid of this flag that resembles the Japanese flag. This flag it looks like the Japanese rising sun. Now why would Africa and the Japan have the same rising sun or the rising Africa rising banner? What is that? Are we going to continue to copy other people? Now, I'm sorry to say this, but our leaders need to have a hand in every aspect of the development and representation of Africa. I know the African leaders didn't review this thing. I know the African leaders must have just said, okay, you'll handle it. But this is going out to the world. This is not representative of Africa and the African people and descendants of Africans. Well, this is all I had to say during this first segment because this thing really touched my heart. And we have to be proud of who we are and what we stand for and what we represent. So, if our leaders don't wake up, how will the people wake up? We'll take a break now as we prepare for our next guest, Professor Edmund Babla. Please stay tuned. Thank you.
50%.
50%.
50%. Did you know that if you're between the ages of 18 and 35, you're 10 times more likely to die from a car crash?
Increase your odds by 50%.
Just by wearing a seatbelt.
It can make the difference between living or dying.
I know this.
We know this.
Do you?
So click it, red ticket. In Rhode Island, it's the law. Seatbelts save lives.
Hello and welcome to the Pepperbird magazine again. Our first segment is, I told you all that we're going to be meeting with Professor Edmund Babla, who is a member of the Liberian and African community and African American community. So we are happy to have with us Professor Edmund Zaza Babla. Professor Babla, welcome to Africa Teaching.
Thank you, Brother Chelsea. It's my pleasure to be here today.
My man, you have been doing outstanding on this website. You like a intellectual genius now.
Oh, it's like the African Intellectual Forum. It was organized a year ago, a medium through which Africans in the diaspora can come together and discuss issues as they relate to the development of Africa. And the continent looks up to us, especially those of us in the diaspora, as a think tank, so to speak, where we put our ideas, and hopefully our respected governments in Africa will pick up some of the ideas and utilize them for the development of Africa.
So what brought about this whole website idea?
You do know that Facebook has now become a medium through which certain interactions, especially social interactions, continue to take place. And because of the social interactions and being Africans, we are social beings, so to speak. While we try to sometimes try to condescend to discuss emotional issues, boys and girls, men and female, at the same time there's a need for us to discuss intellectually things that impact the life of our people in Africa. And as you realize, because you're one of the participants on the forum, the ideas that we discuss in terms of the development in Africa, the presence of the Boko Haram in Nigeria, for example, continue to be very, very troubling to those of us that know the history of Africa and how Islam in the past helped to destroy the kingdoms in Africa, the very empires, the empire of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. So it's very important that the presence of Boko Haram, that Africans all over the world need to come together and sensitize themselves, that there's a need for such a force to be eliminated as soon as possible before it gets out of hand. And the forum has been very, very forthcoming in terms of putting our ideas, videos, historical videos that awaken our consciousness as Africans to make sure that Boko Haram should cease to exist in Nigeria. So it's a very good thing. And again, I would like to compliment you and your organization, especially the Babla Corporation, for the type of job you continue to do on behalf of our people, especially within the state of Rhode Island. You have been the vanguard over years to give our information in terms of our own community activities as members of the Liberian Community Association. And you have been forthcoming in putting out the word on behalf of our community. And your efforts is well noted. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Babla. Coming from you, that means a lot. So what kind of responses and feedback have you been getting?
In terms of what?
I mean, the postings on Facebook.
Oh, very good. Very, very positive. Especially recently we ended our expose, so to speak, on Black History Month celebration. And fascinating. So many information. So much information that...
I noticed that Kara had an article.
Oh, yeah, she did. Yeah. This is Chelsea had a very inspiring article.
Yeah, blacks must step up to the plate.
That's correct. That's correct. That's
Yeah,
correct.
I mean,
and I think what I gather from the reading of the various articles that was posted on the intellectual forum, that Africans, especially blacks, we need to wake up and write our own history. You see, sometimes we blame the white man for trying to write African history from his own perspective, and so right is so. But we as Africans need to do the research and come up with books that will reflect our reality.
That's true. That's true, especially those living in Africa today. You know, they have to, reset the minds of the people there by making them appreciative of their own environment. Instead of everybody growing up there wanting to come to America or Britain or some other country, they get to know their own country and appreciate what they have. But one thing that has contributed a lot to that is, I think, is Nollywood and the African movie industry. We don't really talk a lot about Nollywood, but even though the content of their movies need to be improved a little bit, because when you look at it, most of the stories seem to follow the same line. Mother don't like daughter-in-law, and they gotta destroy the family and stuff like that. But I think that whole industry has brought a different perspective to Africans being mindful of their own communities and working in it. And that's something I think the government needs to capitalize on as well, and promote the movie industry. But, back to your site, I mean, all of that ties in with our Black History Month issue.
Let me interject a little bit. When it comes to the behavior of Africans and blacks in the diaspora, our history, again, you have to go back to the classroom, secondary school, primary school. Our curriculum in Liberia, for example, West Africa, that curriculum does not reflect a detailed African history. And that is, we are not taught our true history. The African history as reflected from the Western perspective. This is what we study. So that when people go to school, for example, they have been so conscientized to appreciate foreign culture, because that's the type of textbook they read. For example, when I was a little boy, I read about snow, and I could not conscientize or visualize what snow looked like. But as a matter of fact, we just sing songs from some of the American Peace Corps about snowmen, things like that. So when you read textbooks that are not reflective of your culture and your true history, then you begin to take upon values that are not of your own, but they are foreign values. Now, when it comes to Nollywood, the Nigerian movie industry, I think they try in their best way possible, because it's a new thing. It will take time to evolve, to develop. But Nollywood, I love Nollywood when it reflects our African culture, you see. But when Nollywood tries to westernize itself, then it ceases to be important, because the relevancy as an African institution that promote Africanism, African culture, things that we used to do in the village, and most people gravitated towards Nollywood because of that. It was something new, something strange. So I hope Nollywood will continue to tread the African path, to project our culture to the world, to see what we are, our values, our moral system. You see, these things are very, very important. But again, it has to do with the academic institutions. Your curriculum of within the respective African countries need to reflect actual African history. African history, for example, in Liberia, we should not only discuss Liberian history with the coming of the settlers, the free slaves, but Liberia should go beyond that. West African history should go beyond that. There need to be an interaction among the various universities in Africa. For example, the University of Liberia interacting with the University of Abidjan or La Côte d'Ivoire, University of Conakry interacting with Fourabé College, the University of Abuja interacting with the University of Liberia. There have to be interactions at the academic level so that history, the various history departments in the university can come together and have a cohesive textbooks that will reflect the true history of Africa.
Well, I mean, that is significant, but, you know, that is something that the intellects, the educators, as a whole have to become conscious of first and start to lay these foundations. Because, I mean, if our educators are not prone towards educating our people and children about Africa, they wouldn't know about Africa themselves.
That's correct.
And one point you raised, that's a good point you raised too, because with all our educators coming out of the West now, majority of them because of the Civil War, because of the different things, you have more Liberians and other people around Liberia, surrounding nations, have gone out of Africa. And most of them are younger people, especially Liberians who grew up here since the Civil War, what, 20 years almost, going into 30 years now, since the coup, the Civil War and all of that. So majority of our people have lost that cultural significance. Yeah, they dance the African music, yeah, they do this, but when it comes to learning about, like you always talk about the choir group.
The choir group.
Yes.
Yeah, the choir group.
And that encompasses a majority of the tribes in Liberia as well.
Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, if I can interject a little bit, half of Liberia is almost choir. You start from Grand Basin, you go to Sando, Maryland, Grand Chile, they're all choir speaking country. When you go to Mid-Africa, all the way from mid-part where you have the crown, from the Tapu area, come all the way to the Atlantic Ocean in Maryland County. Those are all choir speaking people. As a matter of fact, there are crown groups in Liberia who, when they speak, I find very difficult to understand. But when a Bassa man speaks, I understand Bassa clearly. And I never lived in Grand Bassa before. So we have the choir language is very, very large. It's very, very large. And we need, again, it comes to the question that when you are educated to know who you are, then you realize your connectedness to one another. And this is what we need to do in Liberia, to create textbooks that create commonality so that we as Liberians, first and foremost, we think as Africans. Nothing wrong with having Western values, that's fine. I mean, I listen to a lot of classical music, but I also listen to a lot of traditional choir music, a lot of choir music, and I see the similarity, the development of one's spirit, to be able to have that inner peace. And when you listen to classical music a lot, it tends to lend itself to create inner peace. When you listen to the African traditional music, the same thing lend itself to soothing, to calm that inner spirit that you have. So there's a commonality when you look at music. But first of all, you can only do that when you are rooted in your own culture to be able to deeply appreciate who you are.
So now going back to Black history, how does all of this relate to African Americans and Black History Month?
Okay. We should not forget that Black America is an extension of Africa in the diaspora, whether we accept it or not. As a matter of fact, it is the presence of Black America that make it easy for you and I to be able to operate within the socio-economic fabric of the American society. Without the Black presence, perhaps it will be very difficult. While the African Americans are here, they are of African heritage, but in reality they are Americans mentally. You as an African, you must create and reach out to them to make sure that while they are here, but they are also of your common heritage. We do share common heritage with the African Americans. And hopefully in the future, I would love to see the day when African Americans will go into Africa and invest. The African countries need to create the kind of environment that will be able to accommodate the expertise and the ingenuities of African Americans to invest in our economic activities, to come and move in our academic institutions. In the area of technology, for example, you have hundreds of African Americans, intellectuals and engineers go to the University of Abuja, for example, in Nigeria, and help to plant the seeds of that cooperation. So we need African Americans' ingenuity, we need their professionalism, we need their expertise to come back to Africa and help. And this boiled down to a question of dual citizenship. Something that we lack in Liberia. Yes, dual citizenship is so essential. Nigeria has dual citizenship. Ghana has dual citizenship. Africa has dual citizenship. And yet in Liberia we drag our feet. And it's very important that you alluded to the fact that we have kids, they are born here, and they are completely unaware and completely oblivious to our history. And so dual citizenship can help to integrate that and make it possible for African countries, especially Liberia, to attract good minds to beef our human resource potentials.
Yeah, but you know, the opposition in Liberia, I don't know really how to frame it. What would you say the opposition is?
I think, first of all, I think the motivation for that is out of fear. You see, people are afraid of competition. You see, they only look at the negative aspect, but they don't look at the positive attributes that come along with dual citizenship participation. Very important. Now, to me, it's a contradiction. When Liberians go back to Liberia as teachers, as educators, as medical doctors, as nurses, nobody complains about dual citizenship. When a Liberian is appointed to a governmental position, let's say a minister of government, then the whole question of dual citizenship comes up. And that is a contradiction. It's another contradiction that when Liberians continue to send millions and millions of dollars annually to their family members, nobody complains about dual citizenship. But the whole question only comes about when Liberians are appointed to positions of power, for example, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Education, and things like that. And to me, it's a contradiction. And we have to be very careful in Liberia.
So what's the contradiction?
Okay. The contradiction here is this, Brother Jesse. Why don't Liberians complain when a Liberian leave from here and go and start teaching at universities? Oh, don't teach because you have a dual citizenship. Or Liberians are medical doctors, because I have friends who are medical doctors. They go to the medical college and volunteer at that time. Or why don't you say, oh stop, don't help us in the hospital because you have an American citizenship. Why they don't do that? The question of dual citizenship only comes about when an individual is appointed by the president to be a minister of government, then the whole issue comes about. That's why I say it's a contradiction.
But I mean, why does it have to impact political positions and appointments?
I think dual citizenship provides the opportunity that the Liberian government in particular should be able to attract good minds, educated minds, people with expertise to come to Liberia and contribute to the development of the country. Now, I alluded to the whole question of the medical doctor, for example. A medical doctor that goes on vacation and volunteer his time, and then later on he decides to move back to Liberia and he's appointed as head of JFK, for example. Now, that expertise that he's bringing to Liberia is something that you can't just get it from anywhere. It took years for that individual to develop the skills and expertise. Are you going to tell a fellow, don't be the head of JFK because you have an American citizenship? So we have to be a little bit positive and accommodating to our fellow Liberians. To me, as long as you are a Liberian, you are Liberian forever. And then at the same time too, we also have to move it a little bit farther. This might scare a lot of Liberians. African American, for example, they want to go to Liberia and they say, okay, I love Liberia, I want to nationalize it. So, oh, no, you can't do that. But I think the Liberian Constitution provides for people of Negro origin to be citizens of Liberia. Now, you're going to tell the brother, as long as you want to be citizen of Liberia, you should drop your U.S. citizenship. You cannot say that. You cannot do that.
Well, that's how they do in America.
No.
Well, when you want to be other citizens, you got to pledge allegiance to the American flag.
That's correct. But
and give her your passport.
No, they don't.
Yes.
The American government does not ask you to renounce your your original citizenship. They do not allow you to denounce it. And I know you do not denounce it. I don't see why Liberia have a problem with that.
But accepting allegiance to the American flag vitiates your other citizenship because you are pledging allegiance to the American flag. But anyway, that's not the point. Touching on the point of a political appointment. I agree with that, and I'm a little leery about that too, because we see in the past, it's different when you go to JFK and treat somebody.
Okay.
Then when you have to make decisions for the Liberian people, the masses of the Liberian people in the rural area that you may not have been into contact with since you've been in America to school. You see, I mean, nothing wrong with the expertise that you bring. But I just feel that in bringing the newer people for political appointments, they're supposed to start in junior level positions instead of coming to the top level positions. Because that was one of the problems we faced in Liberia in 1980. I remember as Attorney General, I brought that to my father's attention. When Talbot started bringing all these young guys from America and appointing them ministers and deputy ministers and things like that, many of those guys did not understand the Liberian culture. They were Liberians, but you talk about culture now, you talk about us going back and learning our history. These were guys that never lived in Liberia. Some of these guys they were born here, but they spent all their years educated in America. So they come to be ministers. And the problem we were having is they could not relate to the common people. Because the kind of compassion and understanding that you will talk to relate to a common Liberian. The way you would deal with a common Liberian. An American would not deal with a Liberian like that. Anybody with American orientation and training and discipline would not understand how to deal with Liberian people, the culture, and that's what Toba was facing. And most of these guys who came were backstabbing him. Most of these educated guys.
Oh, can I come in, please?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, this is very good discussion. But I think there's always a positive side. And I would differ with you a bit that some Liberians who live in the diaspora for a long time, or when they return home, they are not, they are completely oblivious in terms of the culture and the way of life of their people. I disagree with that. What I disagree about, for example, take me for example. I have been here in America now for over 25 years, but I stay in connection with my people. I don't want to start beating my own drum here, because when you do good things for your people, you should keep it between you and God. But I have been able to compensate some of the teachers for 2 years when the schools were closed, and I told them to open the schools. They had 10 teachers, and I will send some money every month, and they will help to divide with $20 a month with 10 teachers, with $30 a month US. They put in the black market and get something, and able to take care of their family until the Ministry of Education was able to put on payroll. I was also able to electrify the school. We electrified the school. They asked me for a generator. I purchased a generator. Now, what I'm doing now is, as a matter of fact, those who are from Babla were able to build a clinic. It was done by the citizens from Babla who did that. I was not part of that. Now I am setting up a cassava farm where to be able to produce cassava and use the income from the sale of cassava to manage the clinic and then also to help the school. Now, I'm putting all these examples, and there are a lot of other Liberians who are doing similar things in their areas. For example, you from Kirksburg.
But the only,
you guys are doing that.
The only difference, Edmund, I grew up in Liberia. You grew up in Liberia.
That's correct.
You know Liberia. I know Liberia. Me and all the people who are working together to help the people in Liberia grew up in Liberia. So there's a different understanding of the needs and aspirations of our people from our perspective.
Okay.
We live with them. I'm talking about these people who never lived in Liberia before, who never grew up in Liberia.
You're talking about with children?
Yes. During trouble time, there were a lot of children that went back to Liberia that never grew up in Liberia. They grew up in America. They never went to the villages. They never went up country to see how the people live. These are the people that didn't have the understanding. You see, we come from a different stock of people, Edmund. We live in Liberia, we participate in it. We're educated in Liberia, and that's you can't beat that anywhere. We are the product of the same roots you're talking about. Now, these young people going to Liberia have not even participated in the Liberian communities in America.
Yeah, but Brother Chesson, don't you think it is a responsibility of all Liberians, irrespective of the individual? And when President Salif became president, I think some of her first move was to come into the diaspora and recruit people. And then there are several good reasons why that was done. I don't want to speak for the president. I don't work for her. They are setting discipline, going to work on time, being able to make very good report, be conscious of your responsibility as an employee. All these things are very important. When you come from the diaspora, you come with those skills and understanding. So when the government decided to carry all Liberian into the country, it was with that understanding. Look, we've been out of the war. Yes, John Brown might be an American citizen. He has to acquire certain citizenship so that he can be able to exercise his professional skills. There are some things you have to do in the United States. You have to be U.S. citizen to be able to have the jobs. You lived there before with the reality. Now, if that individual decides to go home, then for his own government to punish him or punish her because you obtain American citizenship, man, I think it's not fair. As a matter of fact, it's not being sensitive to a man who ran away because of the Civil War, came here and he has to take upon another citizenship so that he can be more effective. And that individual continues to send money and sending material back to his people in Liberia. And then when he goes back home, family say, oh, no. You have to denounce your American citizenship before you can become minister and things like that. And I think it's it's not being sensitive to the needs of the Liberian people.
Well, when you say, Edward, this, that's why I said this is a very touchy subject.
It is.
I'm for dual citizenship too, but I'm also looking at the perspective that you yourself, you say you can't get a good job in the country that you're a citizen. It's the same thing in Liberia. You can't get a good job in Liberia until you're a Liberian citizen. So, the Liberians in the Liberia's context are looking at it from the point of view that like Americans are here, Liberians are in America, benefiting from America as American citizens, but then they want to go home and benefit from Liberia too. Let me finish now.
Okay.
As Liberian citizens, when there are other Liberians there who've been there and not benefited. You see?
Chelsea, let me ask you a question. Sometimes when you discuss this at an intellectual level, sometimes you tend to complicate the process. But when you bring it at an individual level, now, again, I am alluding to the whole question of those in the area of medicine, medical doctors, for example. You have a librarian who the government said, look, we know that you are head of a hospital in America. Can you come and take care of our Ministry of Health? Are you going to say no to that individual because he has American citizenship? And we need his expertise?
Most definitely not.
Okay.
You know why? That is a professional position. Like you said, many people cannot do that position. But Minister of Planning, you could take John Joe off the street and put him to Ministry of Planning. It may not run like it's supposed to run. They did it during the war. All the people that serve in the Liberian government since the war, some of them never went to school.
Yeah, because the social institution collapsed. You know, the social institutions were non-functional, so to speak.
And they're still non-functional.
Yeah. Well,
when you look at it, they are still the civil service is still terrible.
It needs to be developed. Yeah.
And that is the primary source of support and foundation for any government, the civil service. So that's a whole process of retraining people in Liberia. But when it comes to even with dual citizenship, I feel that when the problem in Liberia needs to be resolved with all these warlords, with all these war people leaving the government and going into retirement. Let fresh blood come into the system, fresh people with new ideals, fresh people who are willing to change the standards of honesty, of direction, and of leadership, you know, and get rid of all these old people. Because it's the same recycling of the same people from the 1980s.
Yeah, but it's easy to say though, but when you look at the reality in Liberia, for example, I would love for the government to do that, but they are setting social responsibility that each government should uphold, and that is to provide employment opportunities for your citizens. Now, in a society where the private sector is so weak, for example, like in Liberia, that over 80% of the employment is done by the Liberian government, then indeed it becomes a little bit difficult to do that, to implement an agenda where you'll be able to retire people who have no source of retirement income. The government does not even have the funds to pay the pension of some of their old employees. So it's a very complex problem, very complex. Because, for example, if you look at the Ministry of Education or Ministry of Planning, a lot of older guys, the government says, look, we'll retire you. Okay, fine. But that individual has to survive. They came out of 14 years civil war. You retire that individual. How is he going to live?
But Edna, so what will happen to all the young people graduating out of college? Because some person has been there for over 30 years and you worry about how they're going to survive when these young brains and young minds, and you also have to remember, we have a problem with corruption that is from the old order that needs to be eradicated. And many of these people from the old order perpetuate these things because they can't. For example, I had a friend who went came to America to do some business for the Liberian government. After he did the business, he was able to get a reduced prices for everything. He kept the change. So he was telling me, he said, well, I came, I did this, man, I was able to have some money. So I said, that's corruption? He said, no, that's not corruption. Everybody does it. You see what I'm talking about? That's corruption. Because when you come to represent the Liberian government, whatever you do in the interest of the Liberian government, that money goes back to the Liberian government. It doesn't go into your private pocket. But to them, it's not corruption. You understand the mentality? It's not corruption. So
Well,
you see, it's funny because, this is something everybody do.
yeah, but you see, again, when it comes to the question of corruption, people tell them, oh, too much corruption in Liberia. I understand that. But you must look at your social institutions. The society, the social, the mentality of our people. The only way you can minimize corruption, unless your court system is strong. Okay, your court system, your judicial system has to be very strong. Because they are the one who will be able to prosecute and to be able to pass judgment on cases of corruption. But if your court systems are weak, then indeed it becomes a problem. The leaders will try, Helen will try, other people will try. Even, you remember when during the Ebola crisis, do we have enough time on this video?
Yeah. Madam Assistant Producer, how much time we got left?
You have a maximum of 10 minutes.
Okay. So, the issue of corruption, we need to strengthen our court system. Again, we need to encourage our private sector. We need to have people who invest in the private sector so that the private sector can help to provide employment. But when the government is the only institution in the nation that employs majority of the people, this corruption will always take place.
Well,
and this is why Soviet Union failed. Because the government was doing everything. The private sector was not energized to create, to utilize and exploit the ingenuity of individuals.
But it's the same problem today. Have they improved?
What?
Has the Soviet Union improved?
Oh, it dissolved. They had to come to a free enterprise system. Now the corruption in Russia is heavy. I mean, read it.
I know.
Yeah,
that didn't change. But Edmund, we have to continue this debate, and I'm sure it was very interesting, and there are more we need to touch on, and I can assure our viewers that we'll be back to continue our discussion of the situations in our communities. But you know something, Edmund, we still have not dealt with the situation from Black History Month. We want to touch on it briefly. So we need to invite some of our African American brothers back to sit with us and let us talk about the African American community and what needs to be done, because we all live in this community now. We are African Americans, whether we believe it or not. And we have to work with our brothers and sisters to make this a better place for all of us. So we got to continue this conversation. And I want to thank you ever so much, Professor, for being on Africa Teach-In.
Thank you
we
very
look
much.
forward to doing this thing probably next month or in the next 2 months. And ladies and gentlemen, we thank you ever so much for watching Africa Teach-In, and we hope that you've enjoyed our show. Professor Babla has been here with me, and we've been talking about events in Africa, in our community, dealing with Boko Haram, Black History Month, dual citizenship in Liberia, etc., corruption, oh, we can't forget that, etc., etc. So we'll continue this conversation. We're going to try to keep this format going because we need to talk about our community. We need to address the problems, the issue in our community. I like the idea that we have RIBA now, the Rhode Island Black Business Association, with Lisa Ranglin and her core of people. and they are the watchdogs for our business community, because our business people have to rise in this nation, in this state. We have to make money. We have to share in the wealth of this state. So until we meet again, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Africa Teaching. I'm J. Ryder Chesson. I've been talking with Professor Edmund Babla, and we look forward to seeing you again. Have a good day.
50%.
50%.
50%. Did you know that if you're between the ages of 18 and 35, you're 10 times more likely to die from a car crash?
Increase your odds by 50%.
Just by wearing a seatbelt.
It can make the difference between living or dying.
I know this.
We know this.
Do you?
So click it, red ticket. In Rhode Island, it's the law. Seatbelts save lives.